Hey folks, and welcome to Typology, the show in which we explore the mystery of the human personality through the lens of the Enneagram. I'm Anthony Skinner, producer of the show. We're certainly happy to have you join us today. We got a great guest all the way from Austin, Texas. And if you're watching the YouTube channel, you can tell I'm showing my love by wearing my Austin Speed Shop cap. Our guest is Jamie Ivey. She's the creator and host of the popular podcast, The Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey. She's also co-host of the Relevant podcast with my bud Cameron Strang down there in Florida. If you haven't checked those two podcasts out, make sure you do so. Jamie is also the author of the book, If You Only Knew, and a new book she's authored to be dropped October 1 of this year, 2020, You Be You. So make sure you pre-order that book, You Be You. So great guest today. Jamie is an Enneagram 6. We really get into some good stuff on the Enneagram 6. So I know you're in for a treat. Without any further ado, here's the host of our show, Ian Cron.
Jamie Ivey, welcome to Typology.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here.
Well, I am so excited to have you on the show, and I'm not going to reveal why until I ask this question, which is, tell us when and how did you learn about the Enneagram and figure out your type?
Oh, that's such a good question. So I learned about the Enneagram, I would like to say 3 or 4 years ago, handful of years ago, and just started really listening, read the books, listened to the podcast. And for me, discovering that I was an Enneagram Type 6 came when I read The Road Back to You and looked at all of the here's how you might be, the beginning of, hello, the beginning of the book where it lists all the things out, and then I just went through all of them and kind of dove into each number and then really landed on the Enneagram 6 because I just saw this is my life. This is the story of my life when I read about it, and I knew it was. And I'm so grateful for it, I'm so grateful for the knowledge and understanding because it helps me understand myself better. And then I think it helps my husband understand me better as well.
And he's an Enneagram 3, right?
He is an Enneagram 3, wing 4, and I'm a wing 7.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We could that might be worthy of conversation. At some
Bring
point,
it on.
Right?
I will gladly sit here for this free counseling session if you'll give it to me.
Yeah, well, you've just revealed the reason I'm so excited. I love Enneagram 6s.
We're your favorite?
Oh, man.
You're ask Anthony.
We love the 6s.
Tell me why.
We love 6s. Well, I really can't explain entirely why. Well, because 6s are earthy, they're practical, they're typically very funny.
Yep.
They, when they're healthy, their anxiety produces a lot of great stories.
Yes, totally.
And we don't.
I'm so glad that our anxiety can do something for the world.
Oh, it totally can. Well, how did you feel when you discovered you were a 6, the loyalist?
I felt seen a little bit because it can feel crazy sometimes, and I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all, but it can feel a little unsettling. I remember oftentimes I'll say things to my husband out loud, and he'll literally look at me and go, I've never at one time in my entire life thought about that. And I said, I think about it every single day.
Oh, you got to give me an example. You have an example?
I mean, a classic example is we love going downtown Austin with our kids. We have teenagers, so it's not like I'm not like chasing toddlers around. But right. I don't think I've ever walked downtown with my children and not fully from the beginning of what I'm about to tell you to the end, like I'm going to go home and see Jesus. I've gone the whole way of a car swerving off the road and hitting our entire family. And so I'm just always aware of, is that car, does he look like they're paying attention? And I'll tell Aaron that, and he's like, I've never thought that. And I am so sad that is your experience when we walk downtown Austin with our family. But for me, it gave me a lot of, this is why my brain works this way. But I'll tell you this, as a 6, what I've learned is that for me, it helps me that when I think that, I don't get into like this panic and, oh my gosh, I can't even go downtown. I just go, okay, well, that would really suck. All right, where are we going to go eat dinner? Like I kind of just, I can bounce out of it. And I don't know if that means I'm healthy or not, or if it just means I don't want to sit in those thoughts. But they come often. And when I discovered I was a 6, it made me not feel so guilty about the thoughts.
Mm.
Doesn't,
Yes,
like I can have
yeah.
them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Enneagram initially, the initial, I think, thing that really sort of captures people's imagination is, oh, this explains so much, and this explains these past behaviors in a way that makes me feel like I'm not alone. There are other people who do the very same thing. In fact, I can tell you, I did a workshop in Tribeca about, 3 years ago. And when I was talking about 6s, a woman started laughing in the audience. And I had to stop and say, why are you laughing? And she said, because while I was walking over here, I was imagining a van full of explosives coming up on the sidewalk, trying to run me over, and planning what building I would run into in order to, right? Is that the story of your life?
Story of my life, yes. Planning what I would do if this happened. And to me, I like to say, you want to be with me when we're downtown. Right. Mm-hmm. You want to be with me because I'm going to know what to do.
Yeah.
Yep. Mm-hmm. When I'm talking about 6s, I always say, if you're ever attacked by killer bees, if you've ever wondered how would I jump out of a burning building into a dumpster, then you need to talk to an Enneagram 6, because they have already thought through the contingencies. They know exactly what to do in those situations. So, everybody got a role in the world, right?
It's so true, yes.
So there are 2 variants of 6s, as you know. There are phobic 6s and counterphobic 6s. It sounds like you're a phobic 6.
I don't have a lot of knowledge in this, but I think that you're telling me the same thing other people have told me.
Okay. So the phobic 6 is actually in touch with their fear. They know, and it's not fear as much as it is anxiety. Mm-hmm. So anxiety meaning it's like this vague sense of apprehension that something could go wrong, but it's in the air, it's kind of just colors the water for the phobic 6. But the phobic 6 knows it's there. The counterphobic 6 actually doesn't know that fear is the passion underlying their life. So they're actually out of touch with their fear. And that can, has its own set of problems, right? Because they may become aggressive and move toward what they perceive as the source of their fear in a really aggressive way as a way of coping with it. Like, you are a flight 6. Right, you're in touch with your stuff. You're scared. You flee. Right,
100%.
Whereas the counterphobic 6 will fight the source of their fear.
Yeah,
feeling fearless, when in fact they're actually quite afraid. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I think we've already nailed down your type with great clarity. You are a phobic 6 with a 7 wing, which
100%.
100%. I mean, why not? I mean,
yeah.
It's a wonderful thing. So for newbies to the Enneagram who are listening, the unconscious motivation of the 6 loyalist is a need to feel safe, secure, and supported. So the ever-present passion that drives the 6's way of acting, thinking, and feeling is fear, right? Which they experience as anxiety. And the virtue that would counter the deadly sin, or what we call the passion of the 6, is courage, right? To some people it's faith, and we can have a conversation about that. But that's kind of a snapshot of what's happening inside of the 6's world a lot of the time. Does that sound pretty accurate?
It sounds really accurate. And, I think whenever I discovered thinking and learning about the Enneagram, it also helped me with thinking how I handle friendships. And so for me, meeting a new friend is, I used to joke, I met some of my closest friends. I met them probably like 10 years ago, and we've been really close ever since then. But I said to one of them, I said, that's scary meeting new people because I don't know if I have space in my life for new friends. But I also am super cautious when I meet new people. If someone comes to me, and this is not their fault at all, but if they're like so nice, they're like the nicest person you ever met, they're so kind, they talk to you so sweet, I have red flags coming out my ears because it scares me to death. I'm like, I don't know if I can trust your niceness. You know what I mean? And I've heard other people say that who also would identify as being Enneagram 6 that they feel the same way. And so it's almost, and thank goodness I've given these nice people a chance that are still in my life, because I've come to realize, oh, you're actually really that nice. But there's a part of me when I meet someone that goes, this has to be fake, and I don't really know if I want to be a part of this. And so I wonder if that's that whole, like, to be secure, I need to know that you're not going to hurt me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very common. Sixes are not naturally trusting people. Like, there's a suspicion that other people have a hidden agenda. And they're not sure what the hidden agenda is, but and then they'll go into kind of doubt and questioning mode, right? And they may question the person, they'll wait it out. Like, I trust pretty quickly. In fact, I would argue I trust people too quickly, and I have paid the consequences for it before. Okay? Yeah. Whereas a 6 can wait too long to trust someone because it's almost like the loyalty test is going on. Is this person safe? Is this person going to hurt me? Does this person have a hidden agenda? Like, when I'm doing workshops, here's how I know I have a 6. They don't usually sit in the front row. That's usually more aggressive numbers, 3s, 7s. Well, 7s like to sit near the exit so they can get out if it's boring. but the 6 will usually start with their arms crossed like this and their legs crossed, as though like they're in defense mode. And usually it takes about 2 hours before their arms come down and their legs uncross, and they start kind of, their body language starts to get more relaxed. And because they particularly have trouble trusting authority figures. And at that moment, I'm the authority figure. And they want to know, am I trying to pull the wool over their eyes?
I think about that in church settings for me. If I go to a different church or there's someone that's coming in and preaching, I always think I'm going to need to hear a couple of sermons because I don't really know where you're going or what your agenda is or what you're trying to do. And I can see that with, I've always wondered, I know that about the authority stuff, and I've kind of thought to myself, do I do that? I don't know. But as you were telling that story, I was like, I do that in church settings. Whereas I need to know, what are you going to teach about so that I can trust you to see if I believe what you're saying? And sometimes I hate that. I'm like, Jamie, just listen to what they're saying. Like, come on. But I guess it's a good thing.
It can be, right? Yeah. You have a critical filter that says, well, I don't have complete buy-in here. I've got to sort of wait until I have more data. Or what a 6 will do at times is go around and ask other people what they think of the person speaking or of something or an event. Should I go? Should I not go? Should I like this person? Should I not like this person? Should I get Progressive or should I get Allstate? I mean, you know what I mean? It's like
100%. Yes.
Yeah, because, and this is part of the spiritual work of the 6, right? Which is learning to trust themselves without having to go to versus trusting everybody else but themselves to make a decision.
Yeah. I see that I see that in my work life a little bit. I don't know if I told you this when we were recording, but my right-hand person that does all the work with me, she's an Enneagram 3. My husband's an Enneagram 3. Another woman who's worked on my team before, Enneagram 3. And so I feel like I'm surrounded by Enneagram 3s, and whenever I feel so proud of myself, and this sounds so dumb, but whenever I feel, and I'm in charge here, like I'm the boss of this ship over here, okay?
Like, yeah, I'm the boss here.
I'm the boss. But when I feel so proud of myself in work is when I make a decision that I didn't run through other people. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't run through things through other people, because you should, because I believe in collaboration, all those things. But usually it's me sending a text to Lindsay, a text to my husband, a text to my friend Amanda. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? And then I take whatever they say, and that's my answer. And so whenever I'm like, you know what, Jamie, you can make a decision without asking everybody else. And when I do that, I have a little celebration over here in my office for myself.
Yeah, totally. And here's the thing that sixes need to do. Sixes tend to forget past successes when they do make decisions on their own. It's like I almost have to tell sixes, would you please keep a success journal? Like so
you
that
can do this.
you can really do this. You have made decisions in your life before without the help of other people. And like you, I'm like, I go and seek counsel from other people on big decisions. But sixes do it sometimes in a way that's a little frenzied. It's like, I'm checking with too many people, and then a lot of time goes into making the decision. And it can drive other people nutty too, because then the six procrastinates about making the decision until, something tips and they feel like they've had, some sort of revelation about what it is that they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So you had a debut book. It was called "If You Only Knew: My Unlikely, Unavoidable Story of Becoming Free." I want you to tell folks about it.
That book was, I don't know if you felt this way, Ann, but if you were like, okay, you get one book to write in your whole life and that's it, you're done. That was it for me. And thankfully I have, more books in me, but that was it. It was this story of me kind of talking what it felt like to be a Christian and have a past that maybe church girls wouldn't normally have. And again, I'm not like a part of the mafia or robbing banks or anything here. So some people would be like, it's not that big of a deal, things you're dealing with. But I had a lot of just stuff in my past that I felt a lot of, not guilt, because guilt is different and okay and fine and dandy and it leads to great things. But I had a lot of shame over. And so I had to work through that. And then I married a pastor and had to work through what it looked like and had to tear down a bunch of lies about what it meant to be a good woman who follows Christ. And so for me, it was this journey of becoming free to be the person that God made me to be, becoming free to not have to think like, oh, I can't believe I did all those things, because okay, I did all those things and, here I am. This is what I am. And so it was this journey for me. So that book was really important for me, of just walking through all of the ways that I had grown to let go of shame, really, and to embrace the person that I was.
Okay, are we talking, when you say this past, people are sitting, in their cars right now or wherever they're listening to this podcast, and they are now rehearsing in their mind, is she describing a lifestyle of sex, drugs, and rock and roll? Is she, what is it that you tell in the story?
Yes, that lifestyle, except for I was always too scared to do drugs because I thought I'd be the one person that died from, the marijuana.
From the marijuana.
This is maybe where my Enneagram
bad
6...
trip on marijuana.
Yeah, maybe that's where that's the only drugs I was ever around, but maybe that's where my Enneagram 6 came in, because I was like, I surely will die if I do this. So I said yes to a lot of other things. But yeah, sexually active at a young age. I got pregnant twice in college, and again, these things are not the most grand, hard things that someone can walk through, but they were my story and they were really hard for me. And then coming in and then becoming a Christian after that and feeling like, and I grew up in the church, so it's not like I didn't have a moral compass within me. And so that was what I had to deal with, was how do I kind of think through that I had a moral compass and the things that I was doing, I do think were wrong and against what God would want me to do. And now I'm going to carry on my life. And so, again, as a 42-year-old woman looking back, I can say with a lot of confidence, those days were really hard because I was 18, 19, 20 years old. And God met me there, but I still had to do a lot of work of not letting what culture and maybe even church culture would say about a girl like me. That's probably where I had to do the most work, was not believing the lies that actually some people would think about a girl who grew up in church and ended up making some of those choices.
And they're not very, I mean, the drug thing is a sixth choice, right? It's like, if I do hallucinogens, I will spend the rest of my life in an asylum.
Yes.
Right? I will never get my brain back, that sort of a thing. I needed more six as a younger man, Anthony. I needed more six
Well,
in
I
my
laugh
life.
because it kept me from doing like drugs, but I mean, I don't want to be too like, whatever. I did a lot of other things like that I also should have been scared of as well. There's that.
Right. Well, it's interesting about phobic and counterphobic because people do tend to think them as, okay, there's a phobic six and there's a counterphobic six, right? When in reality, they operate on a continuum. So I think all sixes have both in them. And there are sometimes when they're more fearless, and then there's sometimes they're too fearful, and it kind of goes like this. You may have been in that, first of all, your executive function at that particular moment in your life was basically not online.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Another piece of it is you may have been at that moment in your life, swinging more toward the counterphobic six where you may have been just flipping the bird off on your upbringing. You may have been, do you know what I'm saying? You may have been
For sure.
Out of touch with your fear and doing things that you should have been a little bit more apprehensive about.
Yeah, I can see that I can see that journey of moving more towards a phobic six for sure. After 20 years of living life and now parenting 4 children and married, all those things kind of, not only do they make you just settle down in general, but they have led me, I think, to be more aware of things that I think in my life I should be fearful of. And so I have grown definitely more on that path to more of a phobic six for sure.
Okay, so what's your husband's name?
Aaron.
Okay. So he's a 3.
He's a 3.
You're a 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the tensions that maybe we could say through the lens of the Enneagram? What are some of the tensions you experience being married to a 3? And then I'll guess some.
Okay, I'll give you a funny one first. We'll start there, so I'm not throwing anyone under the bus. I'll give you a funny one. And you'll have to tell me if this feels like an Enneagram thing or not, Enneagram 3 thing or not, because I think it is. My husband, Aaron, is not concerned with like getting correct details and stuff, right? When he's talking or telling a story, like he's just like, well, I mean, there could have been 50 of us there. And I'm like, well, there were 3 people there. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's so I feel like when he tells stories, I always think people are going to think that we're liars. Like, this is what people are going to think that we don't tell the truth. And he thinks, well, I mean, I can't really remember, so I just said 10. Like, it could have been whatever. And that's always funny to me because I always am like his fact checker, and it drives him crazy. I mean, it absolutely drives him crazy. So that's one of the things. I think one of the biggest things that I've seen as far as him relating to me as a 6 is I think it can be exhausting to live in my own head. I know that because I live there. I think it can be exhausting to hear what's happening to an Enneagram 6's head. And so we've grown and learned a lot in the fact that I don't feel like I have to tell him everything I'm thinking, whereas I used to tell him every fearful, anxious thought that I have. And I think it wore him down because I think he was like, are we really still talking about this? Yeah. And I have learned that I can still be safe and I don't have to say it out loud every time. And he has learned that when I say it out loud, that his response actually means a lot. And his response used to be, that's really dumb. Like, I don't know why you would ever imagine that happening. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And that would really hurt me because to me, it was the realest thing I could imagine. And so he's had to learn to talk different to me. And I've had to learn that I don't have to tell him every crazy fear that comes into my head. It's okay. I don't have to do it. So that's kind of a growth thing that we've had. You could maybe tell some other things that you think happen.
Well, I mean, you just actually kind of mentioned one that was interesting, which is, whenever I meet a church planter who's a 3, right? And I'll say, how was church on Sunday? Oh, it was killer, man. We had, 150 people there. I know right away there were 35.
Totally.
The sales hat just went on. There were 150 people there. That's why you should have been there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Count the
it's
kids and the visitors twice.
Yeah, you're just counting the cards 3 times,
Totally.
And I think the other thing is that's a slightly chameleon-like behavior. You know what I mean? It's like presenting yourself in a light maybe better or exaggerating details that make you look better. And for a 6, that's really hard to hear because that doesn't sound trustworthy. It sounds like, that sounds like you're just kind of not being upfront with people, and that would really bug a 6. I think another thing is 3s tend to be optimistic and can-do oriented. So a 6 sometimes for a 3 might feel like a wet blanket. Like on their dreams, we can do this, we can do that, we can do this. The 6 is going, yeah, but we have, these many kids and we don't have that kind of money. And and the 3 is going,
wah, wah.
Yeah. And I'd say the third thing that's interesting about 3s and 6s is something that I've never spoken about, Anthony, that we need to do on the show one time, which is that different types have different orientations to time. So 4s, 5s, and 9s are past-oriented thinkers in terms of time. I won't go through the reasons why, but they tend to spend a lot of time thinking about the past. 3s, 7s, and 8s spend a lot of time thinking about the future. Right? We're going to do this. I got plans for this, and 7s are like planning and thinking about the next new escapade, and 8s are very also for different reasons focused on the future. 1s, 2s, and 6s are very present oriented, which we're going to get to because I know that living in the present, right, is sort of a feature of your new book, or a conversation about how to live faithfully in the present moment. But it's like when you have 2 different orientations to time, it can create conflict in a relationship if you don't know that that's how it is.
Yeah.
Like you're in the moment thinking, like you're very vigilant about what's happening right now in this moment, and kind of like this. Your husband is not in this moment, like he is out there somewhere.
He's ahead of us, right? He's like thinking ahead about what's going to happen here. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And when you think ahead, it's usually because, I've got a book coming out in October 2020. I wonder how the launch is going to fail. All the different ways it could be. What's going to go wrong? Exactly right. So speaking of that book, you have a book dropping October 2020. It's titled UBU. So tell us about that book.
Yeah, this kind of came out of after I launched that first book, and you probably understand this as well, and people listening would get this too, that, you kind of write where you've been through, what you're feeling through, what you see as a need out there. And I started seeing this need of women constantly wanting to be someone else. And really, I don't think they would have said that, but what they were yearning for was someone else's success, someone else's status, someone else's leadership. And so it really got me thinking about how many times do we not trust the gifts and talents and leadership and vision and influence and fill in the blank that we've been given by God right where we are, and we just want what someone else has. And so this concept of chasing faithfulness over success is where this book came from, and just wanting women to know, not to be Debbie Downer here. This is such a 6 thing, what I'm about to say. You only get one life, guys, and then it's gone. In fact, here's fun. You'll think this is funny, Ian. When I turned in my manuscript, the very first line, I told my husband, and he's like, they're never going to let that be the first line, Jamie. I'm like, I don't care. I'm going to turn it in anyways. Who cares? The very first line was, death is coming for us all. And they quickly moved that a couple paragraphs down, because nobody wants to put out a book for women called UBU that starts with, death is coming for us all. But
and you don't know when.
Exactly.
Get ready. Plan for it. Think about it.
Is that not totally like sum up how I think in my life is death is coming? But the point was, all joking aside, is I do really want people to realize, and in fact, 2 years ago, from the day we're recording this, not when it's released, but when we're recording, I lost a friend really suddenly. And it kind of was this moment of, I look at her life and I would say she lived her life really well, to the best that she could with everything God had given her. And in my eyes, I'm like, she died way too soon. But it made me realize I want that to be said about me when I'm gone, is Jamie lived every day to the best of her ability to be faithful to what God had given her. And so that's where this whole thing came from. And it does not start with death is coming for us all. But that line is in there. Don't you worry. It's just not the first one.
That is so funny. So let's turn toward parenting for a second, because, parenting creates a lot of anxiety, whether you are a 6 or not, right? I mean, it's an anxious occupation, right?
Yeah.
As we watch our children grow. So you have 4 kids, 3 kids?
I have 4 kids.
4 kids. That's a lot of kids, Jamie.
I know, right? It is a lot of kids.
Let me just back that up, okay?
Yes.
That's a lot of kids, Jamie.
Yes, and they're teenagers, so they're eating a lot of food these days.
Oh my gosh, you need 2 fridges. So tell me about Enneagram 6 parents and what your experience is of parenting.
Parenting, I always say that I probably will say at the end of my life, I don't know. I hopefully have some more to go here, but parenting has been one of the hardest things for me. And I think it brings me a lot of emotional and spiritual stress. And I think that's why it feels so difficult. It's also one of my most favorite things. We have teenagers. We're watching movies at night. Like, it's fun, right?
Right.
But it is the hardest emotionally and spiritually for me right now because I feel like there's so much on the line. I mean, there's so much at stake. We have 12 to 16. So they're in these formative years right before we launch them out. But another layer on top of just being a mom to 4 teenagers is that 3 of our kids joined our family through adoption, and all 3 of those children are Black. So that's already hard. And then you add on all of the things that our country is awakening to and seeing are things that we've been talking about in our home for the past 15 years that we've been parenting children of color. But that stress for me, and I always want to be really clear to say that Black women have had this stress for decades and decades and decades. So I'm a white woman. This is a new thing for me. But I do wonder sometimes if it's exasperated because of my tendency towards fear and anxiety. I do know for sure, no matter what your Enneagram number as a Black woman, and if you have children, you probably do live in a lot of anxiety and fear in our country. But for me, that's been something that I've had to really work through. And I think Aaron helps me out a lot with that because he has those same fear and anxieties, and so for him, it's almost like this balance is if I can take my fear and anxiety and put it up to his, it almost helps me see like, okay, this is worth the fear and anxiety if he's feeling it as well, if that makes sense. And then the other stuff that's, I would call like extra fear and anxiety that I still have to work through and I still have to talk to and deal with, but I can also realize this might not be, it might be a little extra for me just because of the way I see the world. Does that make sense? Sure.
So it's aggravated a little bit by your 6 temperament.
Right. But I don't think that it would be there still, is what I'm trying to say, because of the world we live in and because my children are Black and I'm white and all of the things that go into that. But, that's difficult for me, the constant like wondering and worrying and trying to prepare my kids for scenarios without scaring the crap out of them. I mean, that's a hard place, and it's a line I'm having trouble figuring out how to live, but we're just trying the best we can over here.
And that's all you got.
Yeah.
The best you can. I think it sounds to me like, yes, you're a 6, so that the reality of raising Black children in a racially divided, racist, policing, the whole thing is founded, right? It's not an unfounded fear.
Right.
But your 6 temperament or way of being in the world has exacerbated, or not exacerbated, but, giving you an added layer of tension and stress, in the middle of it. And like every other parent, we do the best we can with what we have. I agree with you. I think black mothers have had to deal with this all of their lives. And hopefully all of us who have not are gaining in recent months a revolutionary understanding of what that's been like for a significant segment of our population.
100%. And I've actually, to think about the good parts of our Enneagram numbers and the way that we view the world, I've thought many times over the last 10 years that I'm thankful for the way that I have this little added anxiety and fear, because it would honestly be really easy as a white woman, even with what we see on the news and everything, to think, well, that won't happen to my kids because my kids are quote unquote good kids, or my kids are respectful, or my fill in the blank of what you could come to conclusion of. And the way that I see the lens I see the world through, it helps me become way more empathetic and relate to black women who have been raising black kids for over the years because of those added fears that I have. Does that make sense? It has helped me relate more because, again, I'm never going to be black. And so I can't 100% fully get it. But the way I see the world has helped me be a better mom to my kids. And that way, I believe that to be true.
Sometimes sixes are called, we would say that sixes deal with their anxiety through pessimism. Sevens deal with their anxiety through optimism. But there are times when a six, I think, has to determine, is this pessimism or realism? And so I think in this situation, what you're describing is a realistic fear.
Yeah.
It's not like based on sort of a pessimistic worldview. It's based on, hey, listen, I know what's happening out there. I know what could happen. And so I have to be a realist and prepare my children for the reality that, they are vulnerable in the world in a way that white boys and girls are not.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, is good parenting. It's realism, obviously, as long as you do it in a way that doesn't create such how would I say it? The kind of fear in your children that you don't want them to have.
Right. I want it to be a healthy. I want them to not go into the world blindly.
Right. Right.
Is what I want. I don't want them to show up at college and be out of our house and all of a sudden go, wow, my parents never exposed me to this parts of the world. Because as a parent, you know what I want to do is I want to not let them know about anything. I want them to act like this could never happen to them, and everyone in the world is awesome and kind and going to treat everybody the same. That's what I want them to know. But that would be a disservice to them when they leave my house than to experience the real world. And so I want them to be exposed and aware, and I want them to be agents of change. And so that's kind of what we're doing over here. We're trying.
Yeah, we both our daughters went to all-girls schools their whole lives. And I made the mistake, it was not conscious, it was just overlooked because it didn't even occur to me that when they went to college, it would be the first time they would go to school with boys. And I made the mistake of not telling my daughters, there are bad guys out there. You know what I mean? Like if they had gone to high school with boys, I could have said, hey girls, listen, there are predators and there are protectors. And you better make sure that whoever you find yourself with falls into the latter category, not the former.
Right.
And they had to learn lessons the hard way because we didn't prepare them for the reality that not all guys are bad, but some guys are.
Right.
And you need to learn the difference,
Yeah,
So,
the real world.
The real world. And that would have been, giving them a realistic view of, the way the world is. The way that the world is.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting thing with threes and sixes, by the way. You have very different definitions of success.
Oh, yeah.
So what is success for a six, and how is it different from success for a three?
I think success for me would be like everyone liking me. No one's
Because
mad
that
at me.
would, well, hold on a second. Because that would keep you safe.
100%. Yeah.
Right.
Everyone liking me, everyone liking my work. And I think Aaron would not care if you liked him or not. He would just want people to, if we're speaking of, creative works, he would just want you to buy whatever it is. Does that make sense? And so it was like,
Yeah.
I don't care if you like me or not, which he's a Christian. So you add in like, he does care, but
Right.
there's this idea of, it doesn't keep him up at night. Maybe I should say it that way.
Yeah.
And for me, success would be, do you like what I did? Do you
Yes.
like who I am?
Yeah. And you know,
yeah.
that's there's in the Enneagram, we're going to be talking about this in a course I'm releasing in October, but there are three instincts, right? Self-preservation, social, and sometimes called sexual or bonding. And the social instinct, if it's dominant, we all have them, they're survival instincts. So it's not like anybody, doesn't have all three. But we tend to lean into one more than the others, right? And so I'm not saying you're a social six, but the social is, where do I fit into the herd? Because I don't want to be the limping impala at the back that gets picked off by the lions. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so sixes are a little bit always kind of checking out, how am I doing? Where am I in, I think, in the herd? Because I know that safety can be found in the herd.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm thrown out of the herd for some reason, I'm more exposed to danger. And so what are you guys so good at? Forging alliances.
Mm.
You guys, nobody can forge alliances like sixes can, in part, and nobody actually is as great as being like defenders of institutions and traditions. Church, school, civic stuff, they're, and that's partly because they're beautiful people, and is partly because those institutions keep them safe. And those relationships that they create, or those alliances that those forge, is a wonderful thing that sixes can do. But it's also because it's what keeps them feeling secure, that I have this network of people in my life that I can count on to protect me if things went sideways.
Yeah. I can see that. One of the things that I have grown to love about myself, and it feels weird to talk about yourself like that, but we'll just lay it out there. One of the things I've grown to love about myself is this kind of cheerleader aspect, and and it's not fake by any means. And so I think I can say that, like, I love it about myself because I just really do love it, is that I have a lot of friends in the same sphere of what I do. Podcasting, author, speaker, a lot of friends. And I say this with like as much humility as I can. I am so excited and proud of every single one of them when they accomplish something. Like, I really, truly am. And it feels a lot, I'll use the word since we're talking about it feels a lot safer to function that way with my friends than any other way. And I don't know if that's because of the Enneagram, a six. Like, it feels safer to me to be for everybody than it would be to try to beat everybody.
Well, remember, you're called the loyalist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's no wonder to me that you would, like, for example, you would suck in a job where there was the kind of internal competition between you and your colleagues where there were winners and losers.
Oh, yeah. I would just want us all to link arms and cross the finish line together.
Exactly. Whereas a three, your husband would be much more comfortable in a situation where, let's say, there's 30 salesmen and it's kind of a little cutthroat. I mean, like they're competing with each other for the prize.
Yeah.
That would be far more natural for him. Like sixes do terribly usually in companies or situations where they have to compete with others and win, because it feels like they're not going to leave people behind. That doesn't feel loyal.
Yeah.
They're very faithful people in that regard. And it's part of what makes them one of my favorite numbers.
Because we're good friends, too. Like, we're going to be a good friend to
Great
you.
friends, yeah.
Great friends. And even though it takes a six longer to establish friendship, once you say I do to a partner or to a friend, it's for life.
It's so true. It's so true. I have a friend I'm thinking of right now. Her name is Taylor. And we would just run into each other.
Is it Taylor Swift? I need to know if it's Taylor Swift.
No, not her. But we
Okay,
would just
sure.
run into each other around town at different functions or whatever. And I would always see her. And she was always so nice to me. And I was like, I don't know if I trust this Taylor girl. Like, she's so nice. And we would just we had mutual friends, so we would see each other. And that was probably 5 years ago. And now she's one of my closest friends because I had to make a decision. I'm either going to let her in or I'm going to, like, not deal with this. And I made a decision to let her in. And she's one of my dearest friends. But I look back on that relationship and go, that is such an example of me having to take this so very slow because I wasn't sure what she wanted from me. And she wanted to be my friend. That's what she wanted from me, was just to be my friend. And we are great friends now. And so it's interesting when I look back on even relationships, how they've been built. Some of my closest friends, they've all been through that same scenario.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I just think it's part of the six's natural caution and their belief that everybody's hiding something. You know what I mean? And
It's
it just
so
takes
sad,
a little
but
while.
I do think that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I get it. You know, just so you know, though, there's an upside to it, right? Because guess what? There are people with hidden agendas, right? And you know this, like the more influence you have, the more of a public personality you become, the more people you meet with hidden agendas, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
sadly,
I'll trust myself.
Yeah. You know, trust
And
yourself.
also, my kids are going to come and be like, Mom, I'm going to Jackson's house to spend the night. I'll be like, I bet you're not. I'm about to call Jackson's mom right now. So I'm going to be not trusting these kids either.
That's right. And what are you going to be watching that
Exactly.
night? Right, exactly. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And what games are you going to be playing when you're there and that
Yep.
kind of stuff? Yeah, that's all six material right there.
I'm
and
in
it's
it.
not a bad thing, right? In
Right.
many ways, unless it becomes kind of neurotic. Unless it becomes, you know, I'm never letting my kids out of the house.
Right.
Until Jackson comes over and gets a lie detector test.
Right.
I mean, you know, it's
exactly.
like-
And his parents.
Yeah, and his parents, and the
Yeah.
dog,
Yeah.
and the dog.
Yeah.
In case it's a biter. We don't
Yeah.
want a biter around the
Right.
kids, you know.
Right.
All right, everybody, listen to me. October 2020, Jamie's got a new book coming out. It's called UBU. And for Typology listeners, you can learn more about Jamie's book and actually receive a free printable version from her team if you text the word friend. I think it's all capitals, right? To 33777. Is that right, Jamie?
That's right. Yes.
I will say it again as though I'm an announcer, a TV announcer. Again, Typology listeners, you can learn more about Jamie's book, UBU, and receive a free printable version from her team by texting FRIEND, FRIEND, I believe all caps, to 33777. Jamie, it's been a ball having you on.
Guys, thanks so much. I love
love
talking
you
about all the
sixes.
crazy thoughts in my heads and all the things.
You just said your head. So do you have more than one head, Jamie?
No, it feels like it sometimes. That's what it does. It feels like it.
Are you anxious about having more than one head?
Yes.
How can people learn more about you and your socials and all of that stuff?
Everything's over at jamieivey.com. I love Instagram. It's my favorite. I'm at Jamie Ivey. And you can listen to my podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts by searching for The Happy Hour.
The Happy Hour, which is a great podcast, now 25 million downloads. You're killing it out there.
Thank you. We should have you on sometime.
Well, when a six says that, I expect them to follow through because
it's true.
They're
That's right.
loyalists. I'd love
That's
to
right.
come on. Love to talk Enneagram.
Have
Love
to
to
have you
talk
on.
about life.
Yeah.
So that would be fantastic. Well, much love to you and all of your fans, to your family, and I just wish you all the success in the world. The launch of a new book is always the beginning of a season of lunacy. I know it well, and but also
Thank you.
great joy and excitement.
Yes.
So-
Thank you guys so much.
Well, Typology listeners, again, make sure you check out UBU by my friend Jamie Ivey. And until we are together again, remember the words of the great Oscar Wilde. Be yourself. Everybody else is already taken. Until next time.